A massive $1.7 trillion omnibus bill being debated in the House right now. What you're hearing from is from Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler just wrapped up, as did House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, really hitting back on the spending, the pork, as they called it, within this bill, again, to keep the government funded. But it's what's inside that has many on the other side of the aisle, in terms of the minority, upset. However, it is expected to pass the House. It has already passed the Senate, but the debate will continue. Meanwhile, talking about the Republican Party, things might look a little different next year as they take control of the House, but the Senate will remain in Democratic hands. So the big question there, will that impact who leads the Republican National Committee, the RNC? There are calls for Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel to step down after what some would say was a disappointing midterm, but she does not plan to do so, and we've spoken with her on the show here. Harmeet Dillon, was a top official at the RNC. She says she will challenge McDaniel. There are others that want to challenge McDaniel for the top spot. So what will happen? How does this work? Let's ask Jeffrey Lord. He was an advisor in the Reagan White House, and Marc Rudov, a Newsmax columnist. Good to see both of you here. So keeping the conversation here on the RNC leadership within the RNC, how does this exactly work, Jeffrey Lord, and what do you expect?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, and I've been to a number of these meetings over the years, particularly when I was the White House political director for President Reagan. And one of my previous bosses was the member from Pennsylvania. Each state gets one man, one woman, and then the state chair also sits in. So what I'm describing to you is, in essence, a small club of people who it's very much the inside game here. So outsiders generally are not welcome, and I understand some of the other candidates are not members of the RNC or potential candidates. Harmeet Dillon, whom I know, is very much. That's where the real contest lies, and it all depends on how many IOUs Ronna McDaniel has racked up since her chairmanship. But believe me, there's a lot of insider trading going on here.
Mm-hmm. Marc Rudov, is Harmeet Dillon, or is it Ronna McDaniel? Does she keep the spot? Who do you think would be in that spot or needs to be?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know who's going to be in that spot, but I'll tell you who needs to be, and it's Harmeet Dillon. If you look at what's happening here, you just covered the $1.7 trillion middle finger to America. 18 Republicans voted for that. Now, you might remember that last year I created this fake book, The Art of the Kneel, How Republicans Are Letting Democrats Rule America, by Ronna McDaniel. If you go back to when we controlled the White House, the Senate, and the Congress in 2017, couldn't get rid of Obamacare. We lost a lot of seats in the midterm elections. I mean, I come from a state where this state voted for a brain-dead, oversized teenager. In Georgia, they re-elected a communist. What's happening? Why are the Republicans not winning? And it's because they don't have good messaging, they don't have good leadership, and I was very surprised and disappointed that Donald Trump punted and said, I like both of these women, I'm not going to get involved in this. Mm-hmm. This is exactly the wrong decision to make, Donald Trump. We need leadership, and leadership makes a choice. Leadership doesn't punt. And if you expect to win in 24, Donald Trump, you need a well-oiled machine in this Republican Party. And if Ronna McDaniel keeps this job, you're not going to have that, and you're not going to win. I mean, she raises a lot of money, and that's why Trump likes her. He also has a weak spot for strong women, and Ronna McDaniel is that. But she spent very lavishly, $3.1 million on private jets, $1.3 million on limousines, Broadway tickets, alcohol, flowers. But we're not killing it out there. The red wave was more like a red trickle.
Sure. There was no red wave, obviously. We have seen that. There was a win in the House, but very slim than most people thought. Out of time on this segment. But, gentlemen, if you don't mind sticking around, because a prominent university banning certain words on campus, we touched on it earlier, the full list. And will this wokeness spread to other colleges? So we touched on this earlier. Stanford University doing away with some everyday words that it deems to be racist. The big one here is American, implying U.S. is the most important country in the Americas. They ask to use U.S. citizen instead of American, amongst so much others. Jeffrey Lord and Marc Rudov back. Marc, let me talk to you about this as we show some of these terms on Stanford's naughty list, if you will. Brave, bury the hatchet, chief, low man on the totem pole. But the one that stands out, again, American, they ask not to use this. Your thoughts, Marc?
Well, you know, I used to live out there, Sean, and I've been on that campus many times. And if you look at what's happening in our educational system across America, this is not a surprise. But I'll tell you what is a surprise, that the students are not outraged. If they were to ban abortion and marijuana at Stanford, the students would burn the place down. But being told what to say and what not to say, what to think, what not to think, they don't care, because they've been intellectually groomed since childhood. We talk a lot about sexual grooming. Well, there's a lot of intellectual grooming and ideological grooming. And so this is old hat to them. They've been taught this since kindergarten. So they just don't care. But they should care, because getting rid of free speech is like getting rid of America. So you banning American, you're banning America. That's what's really happening. No outrage from the students. That's the problem.
Now, clearly, Jeffrey, there is a lot of folks upset about, especially patriots, right, that are upset about this whole term of American, going from American to U.S. citizen, and calling someone American is harmful. Jeffrey, close us out with your thoughts.
Yeah, I have a column today at the American Spectator in which I said, okay, if this is really the way you feel, then the first thing you should do is change the name of your university and your group, which is Stanford in it. Leland Stanford, who was a very prominent businessman, founder of a railroad, served as governor of California. And I have checked his record. And he was about, according to his biography on Wikipedia, quote unquote, the extermination of Native Americans in California. And he was also about being anti-Chinese immigrant. And let me just read you one sentence here. And this is directly from Leland Stanford. There can be no doubt that the presence among us of numbers of degraded and distinct people must exercise a deleterious influence upon the superior race, and to a certain extent repel desirable immigration. Now, by their standards that they're using, that would be pretty bad. So I'm waiting to see if they're going to change their name. Don't bet on it. They're woke.
1 minute left. Marc, if you want to close us out.
Well, nothing surprises me anymore. And the students, Jeffrey brings up a good point. The students don't even know the history of their own university. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. As long as it's woke, they're in on it. And it's really disgraceful that when I grew up, if they had done something like this, we would have burned down the place. But the kids today, they just don't care anymore. They're just so docile when it comes to things like that.
Well, we'll continue, obviously, to follow that. Despite what these names put out, I'm sure there are many of Americans that are going to continue to use the word American.
And I'm going to keep tweeting to Stanford, I'm an American.
Well, you can do that on Twitter. You can say what you like these days, apparently. A lot has changed on there. Jeffrey Lord, Marc Rudov, wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to both of you. Thank you so much.
Do the same.
And to you.
Thank you.
I may change my name to East.
No crooked establishment.
None of that twisting the truth.
No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think.
They
Let me decide.
Newsmax.
Real news
For real people.